Hi, Zizaran here with another video, and this is going to be a TLDR of the 3.15 nerf notes, patch notes. I want to preface by this saying, I feel like I'm normally quite positive, this is... I'm going to try to make it as short as possible, but they were incredibly long patch notes, so I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with a 30 or 40 minute video for the TLDR. I think it took me 3 or 4 hours to go through the notes. For me and the way I enjoy playing the game, some of the worst patch notes I've ever seen. And before we start going into any specifics, the reason for that is there were a lot of problems with the last league, because normally what I do, it doesn't really matter how doom and gloom patch notes seem on paper for me. I always try them out for at least a solid month, usually 2.5, and then decide like, okay, this ended up being really, really bad. And there were loads of things that in 3.14 for me was really, really bad, and those things are not changed. So more than anything of what's changing, for me, it's a lot of the things that aren't changing. A big thing for me, which became worse this league and gets worse, which we'll talk about later, is that I feel like Path of Exile are systematically destroying chase items in the game. This is something that's really, really important to me and my enjoyment of the game. Being able to target farm something, chase it down, like Headhunter is a good chase item, Watcher's Eyes are great chase items, but I feel like there are very few. And for example, removing Legion uniques dropping from Legion, and several other things. Like I feel like we've just been losing chase item after chase item, and we'll talk more about what we're losing this patch. Don't like the current state of Harvest and how that ended up, and I was hoping to see changes to that. There is not. We start off by saying Essence Drain is not nerfed. It is technically a little bit because FXC is losing its spell damage portion. However, because of Delirium Gloves, you can actually easily get away with not using FXC at all. So that's completely okay that FXC is nerfed. But, and I'm going to try to like go through things at a time here. We have new Flask types. Ward looks very strong, and there's like a Ward Flask as well, Iron Flask. And several new Flask types. Some of them are interesting, but we've talked about that in a separate Flask video. The new one that wasn't announced yet was Iron Flask. They are making Act 1 more dangerous. I am not a big fan of this. I would love the game to be more top heavy or like at the end heavy, that there's really great options at the end for people that want a more difficult experience, but I'm a big fan of the game being easy early on and letting you learn the game at a good pace. I actually already before these changes thought Act 1 was too hard, and wished that it was a very, very nice linear curve of difficulty. So starting at Act 1 I feel is a mistake, and there might be a lot of one-shots here, especially for new players. Brutus has been renovated. We don't really know what that means, but yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the Act 1 changes. Next up, we have, there's a lot of game-wide poison buffs. These are really, really good. This is a great thing. And for this video, I don't think I'm going to be able to do like a specific here are all the pros, here are all the cons. I'm just going to go through things. But the poison buff, this is really, really good. It takes a lot of the power away from Assassin and lets other builds be able to do poison. And it might open up for things like Chaos Anime Weapon, which I've loved playing in the past. Next up, I'll quickly go through skills and talk about the ones that I felt like were important. Obviously, there were a shit ton, so I can't mention everything. Like I predicted and kind of said, like it would be cool if War Chief was back in the meta. It looks like it might be. It got a fairly decent buff. So War Chief and Ancestral Protector might be pretty great. Obviously, we are losing a lot of power. However, some things are like comparatively losing less power. So we'll be, relative to other skills, stronger. And again, it'll be hard to tell everything until we start playing it, I guess. They buffed Blade Blast in the sense of using it with Blade Vortex. But even with that buff, I can't imagine using it. It no longer unnerves. I thought we'd see a heavier nerf to Blade Blast. It didn't really get touched a lot. So a lot of Blade Blast builds should still be fairly meta and very strong. Consecrated Path looks very, very strong. And obviously we can now use Slam Totems with Consecrated Path. I'm hoping to do a Chieftain Consecrated Path or Chieftain Leap Slam build. I think totems that are moving like that would be really, really cool and feel pretty great. There's a substantial nerf to Dash with only 19% recovery from 57. And touching lightly on the movement skills, I personally think it's a mistake to say like, oh, these few movement skills feel bad. Let's make all of them feel bad. That's kind of how I felt like they did with that. For example, like Whirling Blades, in my opinion, is my least favorite because of the like weird delay they added to the end, and it just feels weird when you get a large amount of attack speed. So I'm not a huge fan of making all of them bad. Flame Dash looks like it's still going to be the best one, but yeah. Dominating Blow sounds like it could be fairly spicy. It's already strong and it's comparatively getting a buff, and there might be some combo there with either Reaper or Absolution. And obviously there's a shit ton of new skills and they look very, very cool. Fire Burst is nerfed. Obviously this was needed. It might be a little bit of a heavy-handed buff because it's not just the CDR, but also the damage and damage effectiveness. And I feel like generally when Chrono Gear Games does a triple-pronged nerf or like nerfs it in multiple ways, I'm always left feeling as if multiple teams came up with one nerf each and they're like, oh, you nerfed it? I nerfed it too. So a little bit worried about Fireburst. Might be able to make it work on softcore, but it was already a very weak defensive build that sort of like got around that by just nuking things down from orbit. Well, it seemed to have gotten nuked from orbit a little bit itself, but we'll see. Skills getting nerfed aren't necessarily the end of those skills. A lot of the times, us as a community have overreacted. For example, Valspark, that has been nerfed like 11 times before it died. Next up, Firestorm is getting a buff. I would love for Firestorm to be good. I think it just looks really, really cool, and I hope this is enough to bring it into a strong skill. Flame Blast also, hopefully a strong skill, gets a buff. Ice Crush, substantially buffed as well, and might be really good with totems, and same with Leap Slam, might be good with totems. Lightning Spire, which got nerfed recently, is now buffed again. Kind of weird to see them going back on that, but that's cool. They're making Trap Spines more interesting. Lightning Tendrils looks to be buffed, and I would love Tendy Totems to make a return. It's just like a catchy, cool, fun thing to say. Tendy Totems, it sounds great. Seismic Cry was virtually removed from the game. I don't think it's going to see a lot of use now. Seismic Trap, however, got all the power and damage from Seismic Cry. I guess it cried itself to trap? I don't know, like all the shield skills as well, Shield Charge and Shield Spectral Throw, kind of look bonkers on paper. These are not skills I've played very recently. I did have a Shield Charge build. Archmage got taken out back and shot, then pooped on, then peed on, then lit on fire, then shot repeatedly in the face from every angle with Lapua Magnum rounds, and then a shotgun, and then a tank shell. Now, I haven't played a lot of Archmage builds, but it looks pretty dead. I think a lot of people expected an Archmage nerf, but I don't think this was expected. So obviously Archmage was incredibly strong. I've talked about this a lot on stream too, that it kind of needed some form of nerf because being able to get that much defense and that much damage from one stat is obviously too powerful. So I would love to see if this in fact does kill it, which I don't fully know. It's hard to tell before things are fully out. It looks dead to me. But if this does kill it, I would love to see a buff of it next patch because I think it's a really cool way to build characters and definitely deserves to exist in Path of Exile. Smoke Mine virtually got removed from the game. I think racers are still going to use it. I don't know if they're going to use it for anything besides skips. You'd have to ask Tight Killer. I don't think I want to use that just because my hands, it's not worth it for the 1 second of movement speed. Val Ground Slam was nerfed. I think everybody was expecting that. That's maybe potentially a little bit because of the gauntlet and people using it to permastun bosses or avoid boss moves. Support gem balance. And without talking about too many specifics here, a lot of these changes are what I'm the most unhappy with. Now, for reference, personally, I am a big fan of the damage nerfs. A lot of the damage nerfs are really good. Some are too much. But I think pulling back our damage a little bit could be a good way of solving power creep so that we're not always just getting stronger and stronger and stronger and trivializing everything every league. So that I think is good. But with that being said, there were a lot of really bad changes here. Nearly every gem has gotten an insane amount of mana cost, and combined with other nerfs to mana and stuff like that, I don't think the mana nerfs are going to feel good at all. I think that is in fact what is going to feel the worst, and I think that is going to be the largest problem with 3.15. Not only do triggered skills use mana now, so you can't bypass things like this mana problem with Spellslinger. Yeah, I mean, Spellslinger is virtually dead, I would say. I can't imagine wanting to do a Spellslinger build right now, because I don't know how you're going to manage mana with... It has so many problems now. Spellslinger just got like shot in the face, in my opinion. And I've played a lot of Spellslinger. it was already kind of weak. It was just really, really nice for early leveling, and you would maybe go into like yellows, reds if you have really good gear. But it took a lot of work, I'd say, to make a lot of the Spellslinger builds work for bosses. Like, that is a big investment and sacrifice in life. I don't like a lot of the mana problems. Like I said, I think mana is going to be a huge issue, more so than I could have imagined from just reading the manifesto. I think it'll be the single biggest problem of 3.15, and what will make the game feel the worst right now will be mana. One of the things that I'm very, very sad and disappointed about is, I think, well, the best thing about Heist, and one of the coolest things they've added lately, was alternate quality gems. These were nerfed / killed because of aura stackers. They like needed to be weaker so that aura stackers couldn't abuse them. I would have much 10 to the affinity of forever times rather have seen aura stackers be completely obliterated from the game so that alternate quality gems could be cool and exciting for party play and for every other build. I think it's very, very sad. I think it's such a cool idea. And while we're talking about gems, I feel kind of the same way about Awakened gems. A lot of Awakened gems lost, like, Awakened Hex Touch. Like, why would I care about using this? If it was, like, guaranteed bypass Hexproof, sure. But this is a chance to bypass Hex Touch, Hexproof. And even if it was guaranteed, it's like a shadow of its former self. I think alternative quality gems and Awakened quality gems are so healthy for the game. They're a very exciting chase. Again, a problem that the game really struggles with. I feel like the game, feel free to disagree, I feel like the game really struggles with chase items. There are very few. And whenever I say that, people start listing them. They usually list 2 or 3. There should be more than 2 or 3 to be listed. There should be like 50. And I feel like we've been losing more and more chase items. And I feel like alternative quality gems, Awakened gems, were a great source of this. I think having like normal gems be the basic ones, and then if you really like a character and you want to start min-maxing it, you start searching for either alternative gems that affect your build differently, sometimes build enabling, or Awakened gems that are sheer power that you can invest into. And it takes a long time. Maybe put more of the power behind them being level 5, because that is a very large investment for a lot of players. Like, without using anything the game has to offer, like increased XP from like Torah on Betrayal or from Harvest XP, it's a very long time to level the gem to level 5, and it deserves a lot of power. So I'm incredibly sad to see more chase being taken out of the game. For instance, Awaken Added Fire is the same as the level 20 old Added Fire, and that was already a bad support gem, and now it costs more mana. Arcane Surge no longer runs Arcane cast speed. Like, there was a lot of support gems that got changed in a bad way, in my opinion. Controlled Destruction is still usable for if you're using another skill to get Elemental Overload. It's still a really good support gem for a non-crit build. So let's say you're using Orb of Storms to trigger your own Elemental Overload, or you're not even using Elemental Overload, but you're non-crit. But it is like obviously never usable for crit builds anymore. It is completely dead for crit builds. Which is funny because people would always ask, hey, Ziz, why do you use Controlled Destruction on crit builds? Well, I don't have to answer that anymore because we're never going to see that again. Obviously, there were so many changes here that were very weird and just weird numerical nerfs. And honestly, I think they were too heavy. I think nerfing our damage and stuff a little bit more over time instead of this brutal, with the exception of if they were going to do it for PoE 2. I think a lot of players are mentally prepared for PoE 2 as a large pullback in power, and then every league again after that we get buffed and we do power creep, and they find another good time to reset it again. I was more mentally prepared for a PoE 2 huge reset. And again, I could be wrong with a lot of this. Maybe it'll feel great when we're trying it. I don't think it will. I would love to be wrong on this one. I'm very pessimistic. Ascendancy wise, we have a lot of changes with Hierophant getting 50% reduced effective elements, so we can get that up to 100, I think. Inquisitor, my boy! That's my favorite Ascendancy, and it fully lost its element immunity. Didn't keep anything there. So that was sad. It's gonna be rough. And ailment immunity is rough to get now. Very rough. Pathfinder will remove ailments but won't be immune to them. So like each time you use a flask. So that's kind of good. Raider has a 50% chance to avoid elemental ailments. Can get that easily back up to 100%. Yeah, Raider, good shit. Ha! Wouldn't be surprised if a month from now you show me some stats with like 20-30% playing Raider. Wouldn't be that surprised at least. It also gets unhit onslaught. Elementalist, kind of got, yeah, poor Elementalist. The master of the elements, but not really. Both like lack of ailment immunity, the golems got nerfed. Technically, like, especially high-end golems got nerfed, and early on golems, I guess, got buffed a bit. But, yeah. Pantheon balance. Yugel now does reduced curse effect, which should be good. Actually, like, all three of the Pantheon balance changes are pretty good. Ralakesh counteracts corrupting blood, and Garukan is basically old Ralakesh. So, the Pantheon changes are good. Item balance. Again, the worst thing they did, in my opinion, was the veil thing. The unveils, like removing something with the Ashleigh unveil. I think that's really, really bad. I think that's very... I don't like it at all. Other than that, catalyst quality no longer affects crafting. This one I'm okay with. I think I'm probably more on the dislike side, but basically catalyst quality no longer affects, like, it doesn't remove it and give you a bigger chance of getting it. It was kind of nice for some items to be able to like, oh, I really want life recovery rate. I'm going to use 20 catalysts and then another 20 to get what I want. That was kind of decent, but you know, not losing them is probably better. Similar to that, we don't lose quality on armor when using a fusing anymore like we used to back in 2013. So, and for the veiled modifiers from Ashleigh, honestly, like really not a big fan. Like the other changes, there's like, there are 3 changes or 4 changes for the veiled things, and the only one that I really dislike is the removal of a stat to add a new one. Ailment immune on boots, shaper boots, etc. nerfed substantially and pretty much everywhere across the game, and the craft is now on shield and boots instead of glove and helmet, which is bad because we can already get it on boots. The craft being on boot means that it's harder to get it than before. Lab boot for mana enchant is cut in half. I think that's very bad. Mana is going to feel pretty bad. Diamond Flask is kind of dead. I actually like this in a way because it forces me to build in a way that it feels less horrible for bossing, because what I really don't like when I'm playing a crit build is I hate doing crit builds for bossing a lot of the time, because unless I kill the boss instantly, once my Diamond Flask is out, I'm like, shit, that is a large chunk of my damage gone from this stupid blue flask. And I feel forced to bring 2 or 3 Diamond Flasks in for longer fights. So, I don't know. I'm okay with not having that much power tied to that flask, I guess. Quartz, best friend. Quartz is still OP, mostly because I want to phase through monsters. Granite and Jade, still very useful early. I would definitely use Great and Janet Flask, like, in the acts for sure, and probably up to like tier 5, maybe tier 10 maps. Stibnite better at the end game because it's a more multiplier now, but it's a lower value, so it's worse early. Silver Flask now requires level 40, and I think a large amount of us are going to be anointing the Onslaught Axe node just for the Onslaught. It's like Onslaught if you've killed recently. Aquamarine looks a lot better than I thought. It basically, if you get frozen, you can still move, so that's huge. I initially thought that the Enduring Mana Flask nerf would be fine, but with the increased mana costs, I don't know if it will be. The reason I thought it was initially fine was because normally I think most of my characters could get away with a level 24 or level 36 Mana Flask and still be fine, but I don't know if that's still the case with the insane new changes. Next up, we have unique item balance, and Mjolnir looks like it will be very strong and very meta and doesn't have to deal with mana. Rumi's got nerfed, Bottle of Faith got nerfed. However, this is probably still a chase item because like the enemies take more damage while on the Consecrator path thing from Bottle of Faith is very strong still, even if the crit got nerfed. Series Promise got nerfed. Cinder Swallow is garbage. You either get life, mana, or energy shield recovery. Only one. I think that's terrible. Carries Witchfire Brew. Just a bottle of water now. Witchfire Brew no longer gives you more damage. It just gives you Blasphemy Despair. Now, honestly, I like shitting on this and joking with it, but it's actually not that bad because for most builds, I would have recommended against using Witchfire Brew anyway, except for Plague Bearer builds, because there you're obviously only killing things very close to you in the Plague Bearer radius, and that does get affected by the Despair. So honestly, as much as I'm probably gonna enjoy shitting on Witchfire Brew, and I think it was a little bit too hard. Obviously, people do use that. It was never really good to use that. A Sulfur Flask was always better, and then getting Despair either self-coursing or from another effect. But that's still kind of like a lot of new players really enjoyed using Witchfire, but it's always been a bit of a noob trap. Cluster Jewels, just some generic nerfs. The only one I really care about was Cold Conduction. Just no longer has a cool interaction. I think this is a huge mistake. It's one of the really, really exciting things in Path of Exile that is horrible to remove from the game. Similar feeling to if cast on crit no longer is good, then that is another iconic thing from Path of Exile that really needs to be there. Monster changes. Act bosses will drop fewer but better items. I feel like last patch already, they said that act bosses were going to drop substantially more items. I didn't notice that with anything except for Kitava. Kitava, they were right. Kitava does actually drop quite a lot more items. Not enough that I was like, wow, but I noticed it with Kitava. And I would love for, you know, Kitava to be doubled or tripled in value of stuff it's dropping. So maybe a good move would be, oh, you know what? Before starting mapping, I'm going to farm Kitava 20 times. I always think like having some options to farm gear is good. So I hope that they aren't like buffing map bosses with loot. But the last act bosses. But the last time they did that, it didn't happen. Zana mods, we have Ritual on there, and yeah, they look pretty okay, and the price seems fair. Obviously, Ritual is insanely strong. But we have no Beyond, which I think is bad. This was all I had written down. There are some good things that I'm looking forward to. Obviously, a new league and a reset is always exciting. This is probably the least excited I've been for one. But still, I'm going to give it a fair shot and try it out and see if I like it or not. That's the other thing. I'm not looking forward to the mechanic. It looks like a clunkier Legion. However, I'm very excited for the new skills. Frozen Orb, Blessed Hammer, etc. Very excited for the new skills. I think it would have been terrible if that didn't exist this thing, if they weren't coming. But yeah, new skills, very, very cool. And I think there will be a fairly good shake-up in the meta. I think there will be a decent amount of new skills that will be playable and people will want to play. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, well, obviously, I think we're going to see slam totems, which isn't like really slams, but we'll see slam totems for sure. I would be surprised if Essence Drain wasn't heavily played and Blame Blast still. So those kind of survive. Oh, and Toxic Rain, I think. I'm terrified. Obviously, especially as somebody that makes a living of playing the game. I would say the best thing, try it, see if you like it. And if you don't, there's a lot of other games out there. Again, I've seen a lot of people that aren't happy about the damage nerf. I think that's important. I've seen a lot of new and old players say they think that's important. And reining in the power creep is important. And for those that don't, completely entitled to your own opinion. The biggest concern for me is the mana. I think the mana is going to be unparalleled amounts of bullshittery. Anyway, I will be putting out shit tons of build starter guides, and I will put out loads of videos and try to help you guys navigate the new everything as much as possible, and try to make everything feel better and try to help you guys have fun if you aren't having fun. And yeah, let's see how it goes and give it a shot. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know how you guys feel. And try to die less than Archmage does. Subscribe if you like the video.